Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining this seminar. So it will be, basically we will talk about how you should prepare. I mean, it's only a recommendation or the questionable wisdom, questionable knowledge I collected during the years, how you should prepare your samples if you're working with a Protracker, or you can even use it for your C64 tunes if you're using digitized stuff, but generally, it's about how your 8-bit samples should be best prepared for your module, that it sounds a bit modern and sounds a bit crisp. So my name is Theo. I'm doing music now for 30 years. I started on Amiga, and with a few jumps here and there, I'm still doing music on Amiga, and I just found some new enjoyment in pro tracking. So I was interested how you can make your samples better, because earlier I always used samples from other people or downloaded it, and you know, it's a bit lame. It was lame back then, and nowadays you have all the tools and it's easy to get going that. So we'll see about that. But generally, I started on Amiga, meanwhile doing also PC stuff, but also having a lot of fun doing Amiga music still. So yeah, that's why I was going a bit deeper into the thing, and this is practically the collection of all the information I got during the years from the guys who know it better than me. Yeah. So basically the goal is, if you want to make your samples, you want to samples that sound good, sound modern, which means like more compression. Like in the normal music, you also know that in the 70s, 80s, the compression was the mastering was a lot more different than it is nowadays. So it's all about compression and limiting. And yeah, your mods, what you release nowadays shouldn't sound like the mods you released in the 90s. So yeah, it's just going with the time. That's basically, and we will see after at the end. I mean, like, it's really no rocket science. You just, these are a few steps maybe you should follow, and your module will thank for that. Yeah. So basically, this is the process what we do. I work with FL Studio, but you can use your synth and everything. If you have questions, just raise your hand, and you can interrupt me anytime. So cool with that. And yeah, I'm not as crisp on day 3 as I was on day 1. So if it's not going fluid, then it's that to thank to. So anyway, you create your samples, or your source of samples. It can be a synthesizer, it can be a guitar, it can be a voice, or it can be a digital audio workstation. So I normally use FL Studio, but nowadays the range is limitless. Earlier we used sample from CDs and vinyl and audio tapes. There's a really good video about the old school way of sampling from Citrix. He's really talented musician as well, and I will just collect all the links which I mentioned in the end, and then also along with this presentation you can download it after it. So anyway, there's a really good video from Citrix about sampling in the old days, and I think this video a lot of new kids inspired. So I'm really we have a small community who does pro tracking stuff, and the youngest members are like 15 and 20 and something like that, which is for us old foxes is really really impressive that younger people still find some love in this hobby and this limited creation of the music. But anyway, this video from Citrix is really good, and you should watch it after this, so that you can imagine how it was back in the days. I just show it now how it is nowadays. Now we try to bring an Amiga, but that would be a bit too much of a hustle. So anyway, you export it, and before you export it, you just crank the fuck up, as Hoffman would say. Sorry for the coarse language, but yeah. You just want to bring out the maximum out of your sample. Of course, most important is in the bass sound and in the drum loops. If you're using that, it should be like really almost clipping, or maybe even clipping. But we will do some examples on that. And then you convert it down to 8-bit. I mean, like if you know Protracker, you know that different notes have different frequencies. So I basically always use the F3, which is like 20 to 80 hertz, and I work with 44.1 kilohertz. So if you half it down, that's the closest to it. But some people use G as a sample base. I'm mostly talking about loops, of course, but you can also use like simple sweeps or leads or whatever percussion pieces. But generally, if you convert it down, you should just select a sample rate which makes sense and which sounds still good, but you can it fits your needs, and if you're happy with that, that should be the note. But generally, as a thumb rule, I'll always use F3 because you can still go a few notes higher if you want to do it, and it's closest to 44.1 kilohertz. But if your sample is longer, I mean, like you have to keep in mind that the sample can be 64 kilobyte long, 8-bit mono, so that's about like 2-3 seconds of that. And nowadays they have a limitation of 128K, but that's if you want to go old school, then you just do 64K big samples in a Protracker, which is should be enough. You can go maximum to 31 samples, so it's around 2 megabytes, and that's basically also the the maximum chip memory what you can have in an Amiga. So I think that's where this limitation is coming from as well. So 4 megabyte, you can create 4 megabyte big modules, but they are not possible to use on an Amiga. And modules should be listened to on an Amiga. If you have the possibility, then go ahead and do that. But anyway, you convert it. There's Audacity is a really nice tool. It's a free-to-use tool. There's SOX, or there are some SOX-based tools, which I will show later on. Or Audio is also really nice. I use Audio mostly for analyzing the sample, because next to your ear, your best guide is your eye, so you can see on the sample. But also, if something is like analyzes it and you can see what numbers are there for the loops, then it's also really helpful. Yeah, but nowadays there's really a bunch of tools that are really handy and usable for that. And then you can load it in your tracker. I personally use OpenMPT. Thank you, Johannes. Some people say it looks like 2000 Excel. Well, it does, but it's not about the looks, is it? There's PT23 clone. I personally started with the PT3X versions, which is, in some people's eyes, is not the holy grail, but yeah. But 8-bit Bubsy did a really nice version of the PT23 clone, and there's a new iteration of that called Super Tracker, I think ZUUPER, and it has some really nice features as well. But that's fairly new on the market, and Hoffman was already excited about it because he tried it a few times. I will still stick to OpenMPT, that fits my workflow, but whatever rocks your boat. If you want to go really the old school way, there's PT 2.3 clone, and that version is also always compiled to the Amiga, so you can have the latest version on your Amiga as well. Yeah, so, and also like Renoise can make modules, but yeah, that's also a bit overkill in my eyes. Yeah, and then you load your samples into your tracker, and you just check how it behaves. I mean, like sometimes you have to set the levels of the volume. I mean, like in the end, as Danko said, it's always in the end just the volume what you can play with, generally, if you finish or master it. And yeah, on Amiga, if you do, a module is like really naked, so you can't hide yourself. So yeah, people will see what you do. But finish your track, and if you have some impurities in the samples, that can be still fixed via audibility, because sometimes if you play 4 samples at the same time, it just covers it. So yeah, that's the magic of the 8-bit sound. So yeah, so we just do some little demonstration. So you create a sample or a loop in your favorite tool of DAW. I use this one. So I just basically show you the module I entered here for the competition. I will use that. So we just take the drum loop. Sorry. Good. I need a mouse. So, any questions so far? No. And are you guys still using Protracker, making modules? Raise your hand. Okay. That's nice. So where's my mouse? Here, no. Oh, so. Good. Is much nicer. Basically, this is a double loop. I take always like, I work for 16 notes or 8 notes, depends on your speed. It's either F03 or F06. It's no religion, but still. Some people take it religiously, which they shouldn't. So we will use that. And I use also maximizer. We do one without it, and we create one loop with, so that you can hear the difference or see. Export. Export always as a WAV file. Come on. And what I learned during the years, I mean, like here you work with stereo samples. Amiga uses mono, so if you mix them down together, they sound not as good. So you either take the left or the right side. Otherwise, you get some phasing issues, which is not really helpful. I learned it the hard way. I mean, like it took me a few modules to get along with that, and then Hoffman said that one day that, yeah, you just save it left or right. I mean, like you work with the mono sample in the end anyway. So, okay, this, and then we use one with the maximizer. Basically, I can also show this, what that means. And yeah. Okay, the ozone is already taking some, but it sounds much less, yeah. Good. And then we'll save one with the maximizer as well. Okay. Yeah, please go ahead.
Hey. Yeah, my question is, what's the length of samples you export? So, for example, you have a drum loop. Do you export each drum separately, or do you export the whole loop in one
I export the whole loop. Yeah, yeah.
So, like, doesn't it make it less flexible? Like, I mean, I'm a bit of a newcomer to tracker music, so I'm not sure like which parts to chop, because doesn't it like lower the size if you have multiple samples and you combine them together?
Mm-hmm. Depends. I mean, like. We use these tracks mostly for DJ sets as well, so size doesn't matter in that case. But we did a music disc where, you know, we wanted to be like sub 200K for each module. Then you do, of course, chopping. I can also show you like how you chop samples, at least with this tool. Generally, it's a good question. I basically found that my workflow is like I create loops, I export them, so I use the Protracker basically as a sampler and not as a music making, like a composer tool. So, but it depends on your workflow. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Now a fixed drum, and if questions, as said, just feel free to. And use one with all the maximizer. So, and then you will see size is like 160 kilobytes for that. So, yeah. Then we will use here we have like so boom boom. New one. If you just load it directly, it will convert at some niveau, but yeah, best is always to prepare it and then load it to the tracker. But I just want to show you, like, this is the no-effects version of the sample, and if you would use the full effects, you get like much more dynamic. So that's just basically, you just use a limiter to make it like sound more pumped or more amped. So that's just about it. There's a tool called WAV to Amiga. This is based on SOX. I'll go back to the, yeah. Basically what just showed you, like, use a limiter plugin. Of course, if you're working with hardware and you want to sample it on Amiga, one of my friends did his modules that way, you can use physical hardware as well. So he used an exciter and he used some maximizer for guitars. You can just build your chain and then sample it with the Amiga if you want to work like the old guys, the guys did back in the days. I'm way too old and comfortable for that, so I'm not gonna do any more work which I need to. So I optimize my workflow, and yeah, that's also like a way. But if you want to feel like we did in the 90s, then you have the possibility. And there are also like open source projects where you can build your sampler for Amiga, like 8-bit. And if you want to find the holy grail, it's called DSS8 Plus, which was like really one of the best samplers what you had on Amiga. Yeah, but it's just put a serial port or parallel port, and then you have the cinch in or the RCA input, and that's just how it works. And optionally, you can use an exciter plugin. As said, I personally use Awesome Maximizer. You can use FabFilter Pro L2, that's what Hoffman uses. Or you can find a lot of free downloadable VST instruments. I think everyone knows KVR Audio, which is like a really good source of VSTs, free VSTs, and the ones that you have to pay for. And yeah, we come from the pirate part of the scene, so yeah, maybe you can find another way too. If you want to try before buy, of course. Yeah. And as just said, you just simply, from my experience, of course, maybe there might be some other opinions, you just simply put the left or the right side. So with that in mind, you don't make like this wide your original sample, but you focus on that, on the preparation, that it gets like a shorter footprint on the sides. And otherwise, you can get some unwanted phasing issues, which was the thing I faced first, and I was like, dude, that sounds like shit. And yeah, that was the issue. And keep your loops short, of course. You want to be fitting your 64 case. And yeah, it's this newbie thing with a 128 kilobyte is like, yeah, no, don't do that. And also, you should avoid clipping to a certain degree. I mean, like, you noticed, or you will notice that Protracker and the samples sound a bit lower on volume. And as said, use your ears. You can do a bit of clipping, but just don't overdo it. So, but as I say, next to your ears, your eyes, and you will see if it's like everything is hanging out of the sampler. Then you know. But here we didn't even hit the thing. I mean, like you can make it louder, which you should avoid. Don't use the option that you make your samples louder in the tracker you use, because you are working here now with 8-bit audio, and yeah, everything, every processing you do in the tracker itself, it won't be good. So start your sample as you want it as you want it in the end with the volumes. Otherwise, the filter and the volume you should forget in Protracker. So Protracker is not there for edit your samples. Maybe it was back in the day. Nowadays, you should just really focus, make your sample source as good as possible, and then you just convert it down. So, and as I mentioned, the converter, Hoffman did one which is called WAV to Amiga. It's on GitHub and it's free to download. And there was another one called, yeah, I will go for that. The other one is called, I have it in the list. So anyway, let's do the magic. Really simple to use user interface, and it's based on socks. And Hoffman was so kind to provide it for all the people needed. So yeah. The links is also in the presentation, but I think you will find it somehow. So as said, just select the node here. Behind each node there's a different frequency. Now the tool has an option to stack the module, the samples, which means like if you convert 5 samples and you select stacked, then it gets converted into one sample space. So you hope everyone knows the 9 command, which is like set the loops or set the sample start, and then with this 9 command you can, if you don't have enough samples in 31 sample spaces, which I find ridiculously lot, but I know some people who need more samples, then you can stack the samples behind each other, like using the same sample slot for multiple samples, and that tool can now give you this option. And I think also the naming includes the starting of the loop points, so the 9 commands, but we can give it a try as well. And there's stacked equal, based on the larger sample. I don't know that. I never use that, so I don't know what that does. So let's try the stacked version. I mean, like these samples are really big, so I don't think we'd recreate it, but yeah, go like that. And you just simply go convert. Done. So see what it did. Okay. So this is still a big sample, but this is like all 3 samples combined in 120K. So it should be. Yeah. It's also a new feature, never been asked before. So here are all 3 samples, and yeah, it also creates some loop points automatically. No, I think it chops down at 64. But anyway, we don't want to stack samples, so just delete it. We want single. Then it just creates all 3 samples. There you go. So see, from it practically makes it 1/4 of it, because you lose the sample rate and you lose the bit. So it becomes like 40 kilobytes. There's one with the full effects. Yeah. And yeah. See the NoFX one? Yeah, it's a bit. So you want to make your samples. That's when your eyes comes in. Make them like as much as possible. Yes, please. Oh, you want the mic? Yeah. Go ahead. Thank you, Otto.
Yeah, I was wondering how the samples don't have aliasing. Is it like because of the conversion algorithm?
I think it has aliasing. It doesn't look good. So if you zoom in. Yeah.
But I don't hear it, at least.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, that's what we want to do, that it sounds good, right? Yeah, but it does have aliasing, so it will be never as good as a 16-bit module. Yeah, which the colleague is a friend of, or how big are your modules, Victor? Yeah. Anyway, samples are created. Like I went to the top of the to make it as loud as possible, but not clipping. Yeah. "96 identical twins." You maybe heard it in the track music compo. That was my entry. And here it was like the bass line was too long, so I split it into halves. But the drums I split, so. So you can split it in before that too. So I basically use for the samples, for the drum loops, where do you go? Here. And here you can save them individually, those steps. Yeah. So if you're using the same sample twice, you just save it once. As said, normally I go for loops, but if you want it to look good on the big screen and not get the moniker you're always using loops, which I do, then you can split them and it has more notes, but I think people just became very comfortable and always go the short way, which is not always the worst way. Yeah, but anyway, limiter is king. Here you can see at least this was an example where I did a loop, and there was one without maximizer and one with maximizer. That's where your ear comes or eye comes in. You see the difference. Like a limiter is always bringing the weakest parts also like to the same amplification. So it's really changing the whole thing. So choose your target note wisely. That's where the BPM comes in. The quality, tracking style, trial and error, and you can always like make your sample render new. So if you're not happy with it, just as say, don't process it in the tracker itself, process in the source. Okay, what's that? Yeah, here's a useful link to the different sample rates. Here you can see that, but meanwhile those converters are already doing that for you. But yeah, here you see the one I use is F3, which is like 22.168, which is, as I said, closest to the half of 44.1. That's why I chosen it. No? Come on. Yeah. So try your automated workflow. I mean, like before I used the tool from Hoffman, I wrote some Audacity macros. I always do the normalize on that as well. Nowadays, I rather put the sample already to the limit and I just convert it in the Amiga to WAV. But yeah, you will find a way which makes you happy and just go that. It takes some time, but yeah, it will be rewarding. I mean, like I took back to tracking a few years ago for a music disc and I really hated it. So, but after a few tries and a few modules, you will find some enjoyment in it again. And yeah, that's just like that. And also, it's working with a limited format is really rewarding in the end. Keep your source samples eventual. As said, like, yeah, you can always render them out and don't delete your project file, which you probably never do. So, yeah. There's the Nyquist-Shannon sampling theorem. I'm not really familiar with, but this is one of the reasons why you should go mono. If you want to know about that more, then you can Google that. But it's a way too theoretical for me. But that explains why your phasing issues have on so if I remember correctly. And yeah, as Hoffman says, smaller samples mean more samples. But now, as you see that he's never getting enough samples, you can stack them samples as well. There was also a video about the guy, reassembler, who converted Outrun for Amiga. He also had a lack of sample spaces, so he basically just did what Hoffman also does in his tool. Like, he put more 4 samples into one sample slot, and then he just chose the right position with the 9 command. Yeah. Yeah. So tools for you can use for conversion. As said, I use WAV to Amiga. Thank you, Hoffman. There's WAV to WAV. One T is missing. Sorry. There's WAV convert for Amiga. It's also an open source project from Boeing Ball, which has a nice GUI. But yeah, if you work with OpenMPT, you don't need fancy GUI. But if you want a GUI and some more options, there's this tool. Then there's OSIN Audio, which is also really good for the Lufts analysis, LUFS, which is like your loudness number. And there's Audacity, which I used to back then for macro conversion. But yeah, the thing is, always use the ones that makes you happy in the end. Yeah. And there are various ways to get to the same point. Maybe you should try each and then just find what suits best for you. Yeah, and I just basically showed you before. You just select the node, convert it, yeah, and load the samples in the tracker. What I can show you, like a sound difference between the different nodes. I have some remarks on that too for later, but generally some samples are not really having that much of a damage if you convert them to lower sample rates, which is like means bass-heavy instruments don't need that much of complexion, and also your lead instruments or pads, they need maybe like a higher thing, but generally, yeah. New mod. I use the same drum with 2 different notes. If we can hear some, really audible quality differences. So this one was F3. And then, for the sake of experiment, we go for C2. Protracker can handle 3 octaves of notes. Done. So there you already see we saved up like a lot of space. Original was 40K, and now this is just like 14 kilobytes. So yeah. No. So visually, there's not much difference, is it? Yeah. Like you already see, we lost some amplification. Yeah. How do they sound? No, it was F, and the other one was C. Right. Tracking skills. So. You can see it sounds a lot duller. Yeah. So the tempo is not correct, so fix that. I think it's yeah. So there's also some additional I don't know, crackling introduced, but you went down a lot lower. So, but if you're making music, for example, for a 64K intro, and you need small samples for that, that's a good excuse to make your samples sound a bit less crisp. But you can hear even on the same resolution of bits, you can still have a really big difference how they sound. And maybe back in the days, people used like C3 as the basis for the samples. Maybe that's why they sounded a bit duller, because you never had that much memory back then. Like an Amiga 500 has the chip RAM maximum of 1 megabyte maybe if you extend it, but basically, and the base model comes with 512 kilobytes of chip RAM. And if you use that for sample space, it's not a lot. So that's why earlier samples were a bit, earlier modules were relatively smaller on size. Yeah. Looping is an interesting issue, like if you use a pad, then you can shorten it by if you find a point where you can repeat the sample. It's also like if you take a looped sample, there are two things you should really just taking care of. One is like to set the loop point that it doesn't crackle and it doesn't click. So just use your ears. Yeah. But your ears are always the first best way to do. So yeah. And here are some wisdoms from Wasp, who I mentioned earlier. He also has a really good YouTube channel. Hi, Alex. And you should check that out. It's a lot of practical information about Protracking. Probably includes this, what I show you, but I never watched it before, so I thought it's something new, but I'm pretty sure Wasp has already a video about that, how you do that. And he sent me a few of his collection of wisdoms that I can share with you. So. Thank you again that way too. This seminar was originally planned to do like with Hoffman and Wasp at a smaller party, but yeah, we didn't make it. Yeah. So anyway, the most immediate effect of lowering the sample rate is loss of high frequencies, what you just experienced, and the result is often reduced brightness, software attacks. You lose. You lose practically the dynamics of the sample. That was the word I was looking for 20 minutes now. So it's all about dynamics. And yeah, cymbals and percussion sound duller. But as said, if size is an issue, you should just find a golden middle. Yeah. And of course, when the sample rate is reduced, the upper parts of this harmonic series disappears, which is at drums, it's not really what matters. But if you're using like certain loops, they can tend to sound duller in the end. Yeah. Fundamental pain may still be present, but you lose some harmonics, so the complexity is just disappearing. Which is like, on one way it's a bad thing, on the other way, this gives you the typical Amiga sound. So I think it's a really interesting thing. I think Luguber had a nice seminar about that too, so you should check out that one as well. It was few years ago, I think, here. Yeah. So yeah. Exactly. So here are some tips for the individual parts. Like I said, parts deny on harmonics, so you should keep a higher sample rate for that. Otherwise, they become hollow and noisy. But this is also like there are a lot of Amiga intro tunes which have this really distinctive sound, and I just love it. But it's also a matter of taste. Lead sounds also depend strongly on harmonic definition, but you know, if you use like don't use a loop, but you use just a sample and use that in various notes or write your melody within the tracker, you can still make sure that it sounds good enough. And also select the note that you can go up higher or lower anyway. So I always use for samples that I use like for a lead, then I use always C3, then I keep the same note, yeah. So noise-based sounds contain energy of wide frequency of range. When downsampled, the upper spectrum disappears, like drum loops, and also bass sounds. They are in the lower spectrum, so I don't think the bass is the one that suffers the least if you downsample it. But as I said, if you want to go crisp, you take a higher sample rate. That's always the key. Yeah. And yeah. And if you want to hear a little of example of this, we did a music disc with Hoffman together with Pattern Syndicate last year or 2 years ago. Yeah, it is amazing techno sound disc, so you should check that out. And there we used all the practicalities I just shown you here, and it's surprisingly good, I would say. Yeah. So that would conclude it. Questions, remarks? Okay, then thank you for your attention and thank you for your time. Thank you. Thanks. Good.